Welcome to the Build a Glamping Business from the Start show. I'm Augusta.
And I'm Carrie, and we'd love for you to follow along as we start a glamping business.
You're going to get valuable advice, lessons learned, and a ton of inspiration.
Welcome to episode 2. Today, we're going to talk to you about how to find your land.
We've been searching for our land, and we will help you figure out where you want to have your glamping site. Also included in this video is the hot tip of the day. You're not going to want to miss it.
Your main thing that you want to think about is who are your demographics? Who is going to be staying at your glamping site? Is it going to be families? Is it going to be single people? Is it going to be hunters, bird watchers? Who are your customers? That is really going to dictate where you're going to look for your land.
That's right, Carrie. And you also want to think about who you don't want in your demographics. If you want a super peaceful, quiet area, you may want to limit how many people can be in a camp at once, how close they are together. If you don't want the party crowd up there, then you need to state that very clearly with things, but you need to plan for that also. If you want it for families, make it easy access, that type of thing. So absolutely, Carrie, demographics of your customer base is super important.
Yeah, I totally agree. The other piece that's pretty important is going to be accessibility. You're probably going to run across land that you look at that is just going to be super difficult to be accessible. So one of the pieces that we had looked at here in Colorado was on a super steep slope, and property in Colorado is not cheap. So this was a challenge for us. So when we looked at this property, we realized we would have to do a lot of improvements to make it accessible to people that were walking in. And like you said, Augusta, people of all ages. So you really want to look at that when you're assessing your land and consider the costs that would go into that to make it accessible. It can have a huge impact on your bottom line.
And the other thing that you want to consider is how close it is to major highways, cities, airports, points of interest, national parks, water parks, restaurants, outdoor activities. Do you want to make this like a super basic camp? Do you want to make this super, all the amenities, including food and showers? But the activities are what's going to draw your customer base to that area.
Definitely. And I think another point that you brought up is when you talk about food and showers and things like that, another piece that you're going to have to look at with your land is what services are available on the land already, what might be at the road, and what might not be available at all. And I'm talking about water, power, sewer. Some of the lesser priced properties or least expensive properties are not going to have services on them, which might be completely fine for your demographic. You definitely want to look at that, because if you're going to have to set up some sort of septic system, or if you're going to have to connect into city sewer, those are all things that can cost quite a bit of money. Bringing electricity in from the road can cost, upwards of 30, 40, 50,000, depending on the location and how far you're running it. So you need to assess your property for that as well. We're definitely leaning more towards a eco-friendly type of setup where we use solar power. So electricity for us is not going to be a big deal. We're still working on the water and the sewer, and we'll keep you posted on that.
The other part of running those amenities, running that power, water, sewer, are you going to buy the land or are you going to lease the land? What's in your budget? If you all could just tell us in the comments here, what are you thinking of? What are you thinking of buying or leasing land or renting land? It makes a big difference for your budget. You got to think of taxes, insurance, the current interest rates, the availability and the demand. Also, if you're testing, if you're just going somewhere that you're not sure how well it's going to take off, do you really want that investment in the land? If it does really take off, you're going to be in a lease that potentially could expire and not be renewed. And then you're going to end up potentially giving somebody else your business space.
Right. That's a great point. Yeah. And, depending on the lease that's available, if you're going into this with a 5-year lease and you do a lot of developing of the land, say you put a septic system in, say you run water and power, you really have to think about that long term, and if that's something that's going to work. And again, it's going to go back to your customer and what your customer wants. So I just can't stress that enough, that your customer is really what should be determining how you go about doing this. And it's going to have a big bottom line impact. So definitely assess that stuff carefully.
Yeah, and you want to look at, the terms of the lease. If it flops and you're not making any money, are you stuck in that lease for 5 years? Are you going to end up paying, some pretty good money for land that now you're not even using? Will it require, a down payment for the lease or the land? Do you have the capital, the liquid capital for that down payment? And can you make it a tax deduction? Involving your accountant with your land options is going to be huge. You need to understand every aspect of the cost of that land. Sometimes you might even have to improve roads, and those things could be potentially expensive, and you would have to do that depending on how it's zoned, what county you're looking at, what city you're looking at. The zonings vary quite a bit, and in another episode we'll go into zoning and permitting, and how that is going to affect what you do, and how quickly you could get a glamp ground up and running.
Yeah, absolutely. The permitting and zoning process and how it is zoned is key. You can have the most perfect piece of land, and you can actually invest in it and put up a beautiful glamping site that people are booking, and it's all going really good. And then all of a sudden the county comes around looking, and they are like, hey, you know what, this wasn't zoned for what you're doing. And not only that, you didn't get permits, so now you're shut down. You may have to pay fees. It may be a complete nightmare. So can't stress enough how important it is to make sure that you've got your zoning correct for the land that you're going to be using. That really should be one of the first things that you do when you're looking at land and looking at areas. I know for me personally, I found that I can look at land all day long, but if it's zoned the wrong way and you're not going to be able to get a permit for it, then that's definitely an issue. So that needs to definitely be part of your assessment process for sure.
That's right. And a lot of jurisdictions, a lot of counties and cities, if you don't pull those proper permits and you begin, they will double charge you the amount of those permits plus fees and fines. It would get expensive really fast.
Yes.
So you need to make sure that you're checking with that local land management, zoning, code enforcement, the planning departments, the permitting departments. You should be checking with each one of those each step along the way. If something changes in your plan, make sure that you're going back and just double checking that doesn't alter the permits that you may have already pulled. There's several different ways that counties permit things. And sometimes if you don't make sure that you're still in that right category, it will come back and bite you, and potentially not only would you lose what profit you've made by jumping ahead, but you could lose everything.
Yeah, definitely good advice. I think for our personal situation, what we've found is the land in Colorado is crazy expensive right now. Augusta and I have looked at several pieces of property. We looked at this one right here. This is the one that I had mentioned that was on a real steep slope, and it was beautiful property, and it did have beautiful views, but again, on a slope. Part of it was usable, most of it was not, because of the slope and because of just the way the property was situated. This particular piece of property was right around $100,000. And for Augusta and I, we're both single moms. We don't have a lot of money to put into this. And we really realized that buying property right now might not be the best decision for our business. So hot tip of the day is looking at leasing property instead of buying property. It may be a much better cost-effective way for you to get into the glamping business. I know for Augusta and I, we don't have a lot of money to invest. We have a very small amount. You might actually be shocked at how small of an amount we have to invest. So we really decided that leasing property was going to be much smarter for us right now, especially with the cost of property in California. I meant to say Colorado, not California. But we are getting more like California here in Colorado every day. But yeah, so I think leasing is your hot tip of the day. Appreciate you sticking around to the end to get your hot tip, and just appreciate you tuning in to us today.
Yeah, and if you tune in next time, you'll get a little bit more on that land hacking. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, and also our Facebook page at Go Glamping US. And we'll see you next time.
Yes, absolutely. So glad you joined us today. And I'm going to go ahead and put all the social media links in the show notes there at the bottom. So look for those and connect to us that way. We'll be sharing out information as we progress along in building our glamping business. Thank you so much for joining us today. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.